All right. While we wait patiently for my machine to boot here, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself and kind of get the ball rolling. Since, if I spend 5 minutes of my 20 minutes setting up, that it's not leaving a lot of time. Okay. So I'm Rob Kaufman. I'm a freelancer here in town. My company is Notch 8. You can find me at notch8.com. There'll be a slide for that as soon as I get going. My first 3 slides are really, really, really simple, so I'm just going to tell you what they say. I'm going to start out with a public service announcement about the hierarchy of greatness. We're trying to figure out what the sponsor levels were going to be here for Merb Camp months and months ago, and there was a lot of discussion, like, what are the 3, different levels going to be, and we came up with 3 levels, and they're called basically sweet. All right, here we go. Come on, win. I really need my slides. All right. Hey, have any of you guys gone out in the lobby and talked to the guys in London at all? Is that something people have done? It's kind of cool. Come on. I'll settle for this guy. Let's see if we can make this run. Let's talk about what we don't need. Here we go. All right, so we'll let everything else go in the background. All right, here's the hierarchy of awesomeness. Let's see if we can get full screen. There we go. Thank you, guys. All right. So the 3 levels we came up with were sweet, the apparently favorite one for this particular 2 days, awesome, and kick ass. There was substantial debate as to which was better, kick ass or sweet or awesome, but those are like the order of from good to great is so. Even though everything's been awesome so far, hopefully these last couple talks, and you'll look back at Merb Camp and you think that was kick ass. So here's my talk, Driven Merb, a user story. So, what is development really about? Why do we do what we do as web developers? It's about these people, the users. It's not about these guys, right? I mean, these guys are cool, but they're not, for most projects, the primary users. So, why use story-driven development? It sets the focus on the user of your application. The people who are really going to be doing this aren't a bunch of developers sitting in a room, like we saw in that last slide. They're, mom and dad and, the people who are really going to be the customer of your app. Story-driven development provides acceptance level testing. So this is the is it good, is it not good, as opposed to just the, is what little piece of code I'm working on working the way I think it should. Good story-driven development will wow your clients and your managers. This is all of the part of why that I'm going to talk about. If you want a much more fully thought out argument as to why you should be doing story-driven development, you can see David Chilimsky's talk from RailsConf or one of several other times that he's given a similar talk. So how do you do story-driven development in Merb? Well, right now you can install Merb Edge plugins. You can add Merb stories to your dependency list, and then run the Merb story setup task, Merb generator, and then add stories. And these stories can be very complex. They can be simple. You can put them in a directory hierarchy. You can do all the flexible things that you need to make StoryRunner work. Webrat is kind of a middleware, if you will, or a language for writing the actual stuff your stories can run. One of the things that makes me really sad right now is Webrat does not work with Merb as it stands right this instant. It should, it will again soon, it's just not functional at this instant. What Webrat provides is sort of a set of languages or commands or APIs that can then use these different backends. The core backend, which uses HPCOT, a Selenium backend, which is really freaking cool, some Rails backend, which basically uses the Rails integration testing, and there is a Merb backend. It was working not that long ago, and it will be working again shortly. So this is what I think should happen. And I'm going to switch to a demo here, which of course means I need to start some more stuff. All right. Sorry guys, you gotta bear with me for just another second. All right, so we should be able to do rake. Actually, let's do the simple thing first. We would say we want to run our stories. And we have the service story, which I will show you in just a second. All right, we're getting somewhere. Let's not make this take up the whole screen. How's that look? Okay, so we have our story in StoryRunner. It shows the scenario. We say a given user logs in with the password, and they have an empty cart. When items are added to the cart. Obviously, this is not a complete story. It needs a then. It needs a conclusion. But this sort of shows you the flavor of what StoryRunner stories are about. These are the steps that go with that story, the actual code. This is written in webrat, so we can say things like browser.visits this page. Browser.body should not match. This is kind of that complete stack testing that YCats was talking about yesterday. We can say things like browser.click, which simulates the actual clicking on the link, not just going to the URL that the link should point to. We can then see here this little tiny bit of code. Every once in a while you'll run into something that isn't quite there in one of the backends. So for instance, if I'm using the Selenium backend, I need to do selenium.click instead of clicks button. These are places where we need to have improvement, like this needs to get done to the point where this if statement disappears. But when you get stuck and you're trying to make a test work, you don't want to be constantly working on the testing framework. So you can kind of go back and forth there. So that's all cool. Let's see if this actually runs here. So we see that I ran Ruby stories, service story.rb. It says, okay, here's the story. It ran, everything succeeded, yay, right? And that ran with the webrat core backend, so it was fairly fast. Now for the magic part. This exact same code we're going to run in Selenium. So we can say rake. Now, when I said earlier that this is how it should work, you guys are going to see a Rails app start here in a second. Because this isn't, like I said, webrat's not quite happy with Merb right now. Okay, so that starts up. This started the Selenium server. It started a server instance pointing to the testing database. That's all good. So before we did this, just move in here. Right? So the only difference we're going to do to make it run in Selenium is we're going to say run in Selenium. Now obviously this takes longer to start. We get a little message telling us that we've done what we intended to do. Need to make it bigger. There we go. We see down here that this Firefox icon will dance a little bit. Pull it up. There it is. It's dancing. It's running through our site right now. It completed successfully. Let's do that again, but let's see if I can catch it and make it slow down, because it goes really fast when it succeeds. Okay, so what happens if we have a failure? Obviously, we wouldn't want the browser to close in that case. Obviously, we would want, there it is. I knew it had to be hiding here somewhere. So let's go in here and say, all right, there is no Bob link on that page. Let's run it again. My system starts way too much stuff when I boot it up, obviously. All right, slow mode. So we see all the pages happening here. I wish I could resize this little block for you guys so you could see. But if we scroll down, we see that it says click webrat link equals Bob. Obviously, there is no Bob on this page. If we go back to our terminal here, we'll see that the story failed, or the test failed. It says element webrat link Bob not found. We can, look on the page and say, hey, I thought Bob was supposed to be here. What's going on? Oh, they renamed that cancer. All right, well, that's easy. And we can fix our test and run it again. That's what, in my opinion, the future should look like. Like, it should be that simple to just write very simple steps and test your whole framework. There we go. Let's back to slideshow here. Getting the hang of this. All right. So that's not hard. Like, if we can take the same things we're doing that we're running all the time as our user stories quickly and then run them in Selenium to see that it works with the actual real browser every once in a while, that's awesome, right? I can take that same exact code and run it on a Windows box and make IE do the exact same thing I just made Firefox do, right? I can do it with Safari. I can see that it works all the time. It's not, oh, we just deployed the site. Can everybody in the office take a couple minutes and click through all the links and make sure we didn't break anything? You don't want to do that. It's what we all do, right? But that's not okay. That's not good enough. That's what leads to 2 a.m. calls. Rob, The orders processing works really great until you put in a credit card number and then it breaks, right? We don't want that to happen. We want to know that our users are having a good experience, right? And we want it to be easy to do because otherwise we won't, right? I'm a lazy developer. I like test-driven development or BDD because it makes my life easier and not harder. And if it starts making my life really hard, I won't do it. So what are some gotchas with Selenium? If you're using Selenium, Firefox 3 on OS X, like right now, it starts up. It does that little dance you guys saw where it like starts and then disappears and then starts and then disappears. And then it starts again and then nothing happens. And if you quit Firefox at that point, it then starts a fourth time and then runs. Okay? That's not good enough, clearly, right? What you guys saw just now for the demo was Firefox 2. So if you have Firefox 2 installed, it works perfectly. Firefox 3 will be working. I pulled down a nightly build like 2 or 3 nights ago, and it works then, so I'm just kind of waiting for that to get released. Safari has some special setup with Selenium. There you have to kind of manually set the proxy. Again, you pull down the latest nightly build. That's awesome. We'll get there.
There's a workaround for the Firefox thing, by the way.
What?
There's a workaround for the Firefox thing.
Yeah, if you...
It has to do with EULA and profiles.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, can we mic him so that...
Does that work?
Okay,
Okay.
there you go.
Yeah, there's a workaround for the Firefox thing. I think it'll bounce twice now, which still sucks. But it has to do with a new profile getting started up and it not being able to pick the agree to the EULA from the command line is the problem with Firefox 3.
Ah, okay.
I know that I hacked together something, and I can show it to you later.
Cool.
It might be useful.
Yeah. So what's the future look like? The future is Cucumber. I'm going to say this very clearly because I see a lot of mistaken information going around right now. After RSpec 1.1.5, Cucumber will replace StoryRunner. Not at 1.1.5. After 1.1.5 in the RSpec release, Cucumber will be integrated in to replace StoryRunner. It's basically the same vision of writing stories that you saw just a minute ago. The phrasing is a little cleaner, and the underlying code is much better. Okay, the part under the hood inside that black box of making the stories run is a significant improvement and is a big step forward. So, you've got your low-level testing, you've got unit testing all throughout your application. Maybe you're mocking out your controllers a little too much, maybe not, but you know, you're hitting your stack at each individual piece, and that's really sweet. Awesome is you've got some custom setup where you have some BDD, you have StoryRunner kind of running, all of your steps have custom like helpers that go with them to kind of get you through and make things really workable. But you can do the story-driven development, but it's just sort of painful. Kick-ass is the ability to share the steps for our stories, is the ability to have, you start up the server, you start up your tests, it runs. You want to run it on a different environment or on a different platform, you set a flag, it runs. That's kick-ass. That's the future. That's where we should be. And it's going to take some development. It's going to take more than just me. It's going to take more than just 2 or 3 people to get there. But we are making massive progress on that. And I really think that in a very short order, we can be there. So that's it. Anybody have any questions?
Can you talk a little bit about, since you're running it in the actual container, how you mock stuff out? I mean, you mentioned the credit cards. I assume you're not actually processing a credit in your Selenium tests.
Sure. I had an interesting discussion last night talking about how separate the you want your story level, your acceptance level testing to be from your app. You need some integration to be able to look at the models and to be able to do some mocking. Because, for instance, things like credit card processing, like at some point you need to mock that API interaction, right? That's a good place to do a mock, right? Now, most of the stuff, if you've got a bunch of mocks in your acceptance level testing, like you have missed the point utterly and completely. You're kind of playing with yourself at that point. But for certain things like external APIs, you have to have something. Truthfully, for credit cards, most of the time what I do is I have one testing number that works, right? That's the, most, like, you go to authorize.net or whatever, they have a number that they give you that's your testing number that you can use, and you can do the real thing. You can hit the stack if you want. But for certain, like, API calls, external APIs, like, you do need to mock those. So you do need some integration, and I think that that's kind of where that line is. Like, you want to be hitting the browser, you want to be doing the interaction outside, but you need to be able to look inside to see that the data is being populated correctly.
Then in terms of repeatability, do you flush the database before you start each Selenium test, or do you?
Absolutely, yes.
Do you usually have to worry about order of the tests being executed?
In my opinion, your webrat level testing, that acceptance level testing, should be kind of slow. You shouldn't do it every time you write a new tiny little piece of code, or every time even that you commit to your local Git repository. It should be like, okay, I think this is ready. I'll run the webrat tests, and take the time, and then, okay, I'll push that up.
So you're moving
And then,
back to, like, a
okay,
nightly build.
everybody's ready. We're going to push a release, right? Let's put it up on the staging server or put it up somewhere and run through Selenium in the browser and see that everything's where it needs to be, right? That's kind of you have to accept that that's going to be slow. It has to be okay that that's slow. And you don't do it all the time. But when you do need it, it's a heck of a lot faster to watch that little browser magically go through all those steps than to try and remember to click through each link on your own.
Do you have an idea then, for your Selenium tests, how long they take?
Right now, we have the entire order process on that one site that you saw covered. It runs end to end it's like 3 minutes, okay? So on Firefox 2, if it has to wait for me to go and click on Firefox and quit it and start it over again, well, that takes a little longer. So it's in that time zone. On the Windows side, it takes a little longer. So when I run it in IE, for some reason, it just is slower. But you're within like 5 to 10 minutes, which I got to tell you, most of the time when you're working on a deadline, if in 10 minutes you can click through your whole site, you can feel really good about that, right? It's something that's going to get done.
And do you go to each environment and launch it, or do you have
Yes.
a way to launch from?
I don't have a way right now to just say go.
Okay.
Right? That would be the next step in kick-ass, right? Whatever's better than kick-ass, that gets us there. But the truth of the matter is I don't usually have a Windows machine running, so I got to at least turn it on. It would be fantastic to have some sort of service that you could just say, hey, do this. We got one down here. I'm sorry.
I say, doesn't that service already exist with the Selenium RC, where you can just run through any browser you want and then it's all distributed, and you can run that in addition to CI?
Yes, but you have to set the systems up to do that.
Okay.
And I don't have any, if you download this one thing, it does it. You see what I'm saying? It's still quite a bit of setup to get those, even those systems have to be dedicated to that task, basically. But yes, it can be done. There's some guys out there that have custom setups. It's not consumer level, right? Even if the consumers are us.
So, do you then just have a lot of virtual machines that because if you're having dedicated systems?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Somebody asked in RC if this is different or the opposite of what I said yesterday, and that it's actually exactly what I said yesterday, pretty much. So it's cool, and we're definitely going to be doing more work to get Cucumber / webrat like functionality inside of Merb.
Yeah.
A big annoyance with Cucumber right now, with Cucumber and Story Runner, is that there's a massive transition at the same time as a 1.0 release. So that was not really viable.
Absolutely.
But we're definitely, I know in my vision of how we're going to do testing in the future of Merb, there's going to be a big place for Cucumber and webrat, because it's the logical continuation of what I said yesterday, really. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. One of the things I really see is that Merb backend for webrat being basically the things that you were talking about yesterday. So I really think that those things go hand in hand really, really well. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, guys.